Today we're going to talk about how buying a home in Atlanta, Georgia can go really wrong. Now, I've been selling real estate in the Atlanta area for quite a while now, and every time I see or hear of a buyer having a stressful, horrible buying experience, it's for very similar reasons. So I'm about to share with you the 5 most common ways that home buying in Atlanta can go really wrong. And the good news is, if you take in this information and prepare for it, you are way less likely to have a bad experience when you go to purchase your home. So let's get right into it. So right off the bat, you should understand that the majority of stress and regret when purchasing a home arises in situations where the buyers had faulty expectations. Meaning they thought the home buying process and ownership process should be one way, but it ended up not being that way. And that's the most common way I see regret and anguish come up. And the most common clients that I see that are out of alignment with proper expectations are first-time home buyers and out-of-state relocations, which, as you know, is the majority of my clients. So setting expectations with my clients right from the beginning is one of the biggest ways I've been able to ensure the overwhelming majority of my clients have a fantastic purchasing experience. So let's dive right into my list of the 5 ways purchasing a home in Atlanta can go really wrong. This is in no particular order, they are all equally important. The first one I want to talk about is home inspection reports. And this is definitely the most common area we see a misalignment of expectations. I'm about to pull up an example of a home inspection report from one of my clients to provide you more context. But just to give you a brief example, one of the most common scenarios where I get a client who has expectations that are not in line with the actual reality of purchasing in Atlanta in 2024 would be relocation clients from Florida. Now, I work with a lot of these. In fact, the most common relocation to Georgia are people coming from Florida. As you know, or you may not know, many of the homes in Florida, depending on which area we're talking about, are much newer, right? A lot of new construction, and you certainly don't see 100-plus-year-old homes or even 50-plus-year-old homes nearly as commonly as you do in the Atlanta area. So right there, you have potential for expecting the homes that you're looking at to be in a similar condition as the place that you currently live in, and depending on where you're coming from, that's just not the case. The other thing in Florida is that the homes are very similar to one another, mostly for reasons of weather, right? You have one-story homes, you have a particular type of roof, you have a lot of uniformity in the building materials across the whole state. And I know there's exemptions to everything I'm saying, but I think you understand my point. In the Atlanta area, we see older homes and we see all different styles of homes and homes made up of all different types of building materials. So one thing I always have to do with my out-of-state relocation clients, well, really any client, and this goes for first-time home buyers as well, because again, they don't necessarily know what they're getting into when purchasing a home, is prepping them on the inspection report. So let's pull up a report and go through it so you can understand what I'm talking about. All right, so let's look at an actual inspection report from a recent transaction I did so that you can visually see what to expect in an inspection report if you're purchasing in Atlanta, and why it may cause some anxiety for buyers when they first see it. So looking at this report right off the bat, you see, oh my gosh, 58 maintenance items, 39 recommendations, safety hazards. That sounds scary. Let's back out. I want to terminate and we'll look at new construction. Well, in this case, that would actually be a huge mistake because, believe it or not, this is one of the cleanest inspection reports I've seen in my career. So one thing you have to understand when you hire an inspection company is that they're going to be extremely thorough, and they are going to point out very obvious things that you probably noticed in your first time walking through the home. Now, they want to be very thorough. You want them to be thorough. They never want a client to be able to go back and say, hey, you didn't point this out. However, just because it's on the report does not mean it's something that immediately needs to be addressed or ever needs to be addressed. For instance, if we look in this page, we can see they pointed out as a orange item that there's no handrails along this walking path. Now, of course, we knew this. We noticed it or noticed that it wasn't there when we visited the home. This isn't a surprise. And of course, you could put a handrail back there, but I think for most people, it would not be worth the time or expense. And then look at this one, splitting beam on the back deck. I mean, that really does sound scary, especially if you've never purchased a home or you're only used to new construction. But the reality is, cracks like this happen naturally over time in decks. This deck was actually in great shape. Now, the big differentiator here is this is an orange item, and it's really the red items that you want to pay close attention to. Now, not all of these reports are the same. It's going to depend on the company that you're using, but almost all of them will have classifications for things that they are just observing, things that you may want to look further into, or things that you want to address immediately. Another example of where this may convey some anxiety where it's not necessary would be something like with the roof, calling out granule loss. Now, yes, it's important to note if there's granule loss or any other damage with your roof. It's important to note how old the roof is, but more importantly, it's important to know if there's any damage in the roof that's causing leaks or water intrusion. Now, that would definitely fall into the category of needing to get that addressed from the seller in a certain way. But again, the reality of this home is that there was no leaks whatsoever. The roof was still functioning, and based on the average lifespan and disclosure of this age, had at least 7 more years of viability. So it's definitely something to be aware of, but to potentially terminate this deal because you think you need a new roof would just not be accurate. Now, let's take a quick look at the one safety hazard red item here. We have poor airdrop from the HVAC. They have a thermometer and they turn down the AC and make sure it reaches a certain temperature in a certain period of time. Now, this is definitely something that we want to look into. You know, in this situation, we have the HVAC company go out, service everything, give a report. If there's anything that needs to be fixed, they're going to take care of it. So again, it's really important to differentiate what the inspectors are just calling out or making note of and what they're telling you is actually an issue right now. Now, the last thing I'll say about this category is prioritizing quality over quantity. Now, as you saw, there's nearly 100 different items called out in this report, which is a large quantity. However, if you were to estimate the dollar value associated with these repairs, it would be very minimal. And that's really what you want to focus on. You know, you can have a report that's 100 pages long and calls out everything in the house, but what is the dollar value that those potential repairs represent? For example, if your electrical outlets are near water and they're not GFCI protected, that is going to be a red item, and it's important. However, it's not an expensive fix. Getting an electrician to do that is not going to cost you an arm and a leg, and it certainly falls into the category of something a handy person could do themselves at minimal cost. Whereas a potential issue with that foundation obviously could cost tens of thousands of dollars. So one of the frameworks that I think about these reports is there anything troubling about the roof, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, or foundation? Now, those are not the only important things, but those are the big ticket items, the items that could potentially cost you a lot of money to repair. And again, this may seem super obvious to you, but a lot of clients are coming from a part of the country where they have a completely different style of home, different building materials, and they just don't see these types of issues or quantity of issues. And if you're a first-time home buyer, it may just be a bit of surprise how much upkeep goes into a home and how much wear and tear develops over time. So by far, one of the #1 ways you can reduce the likelihood of having a stressful buying process is to just understand and have realistic expectations for what kind of things are going to come up on an inspection report and judge those things based on the potential dollar value of the repair or replacement. #2 on the list is seller concessions, also known as getting a great deal. Now, of course, everyone wants a great deal. However, some clients get particularly hung up on getting what they feel like is going to be a great real estate deal. And usually what that means to them is getting a significant discount off the list price and also getting most, if not all, of the issues that come up on an inspection report fixed by the seller prior to close. Now listen, my job as an agent is to get my clients the best deal possible. That is always what I'm striving for. But again, it's about expectations. I think some people, when they're buying a home, bring in the mindset they have when they go to buy a car. And those two things are just very, very different. For one, when you go to buy a car, there's unlimited inventory, generally speaking, right? I mean, sure, you might want a certain type of car with a certain type of design and finish, but the reality is there's no shortage of Honda Civics or Toyota Priuses available for you to purchase. You've got a certain budget and you know exactly what kind of car you can afford for that budget, and that gives you a very consistent baseline for what kind of deal you're gonna get. However, when you go to purchase a home, there's a very limited amount of homes for sale at any given time. And depending on which type of real estate market cycle we are currently in, there may be a lot of great options available, or like in the strong sellers market we are currently in, there might be a shortage of available options. And keep in mind, you can't just purchase any house, right? I mean, all of the work that I do with my clients is to find the right 1 or 2 neighborhoods that are gonna work for the lifestyle they're looking for them and their family. So right there, you've narrowed it down to the homes that are available only in the areas you're interested in living in. Then of course, you've got a certain budget and a certain size that the home needs to be or not be. And so as you can see, the reality is, especially in a seller's market with low inventory, which has been the case for a few years in the Atlanta area, unless you have an unlimited budget, there are not going to be an overwhelming amount of options in the place that you're looking at your budget that meet all the requirements of the condition of the home at any given time. And of course, it's very common to run into scenarios, especially on a hot new listing, where you are directly competing with other buyers, which is going to have a major impact on the type of offer you submit. And of course, that's almost never the case when buying a car. Now, the other thing to discuss here is, what does a good deal look like? Unfortunately, a lot of people's barometer for a great deal is getting a large chunk off the list price. But this is really arbitrary because sellers can list at any price they want. Now, if they're smart, they're going to list in line with what the market is showing them. But if I'm selling a house that the market shows is worth around $500,000 and I'm listing it for $600,000, well, you could get a $75,000 discount off the list price and still be overpaying for the home by $25,000. So the list price is only a good standard for value in so much that it reflects the market value of similar homes in the immediate area that have recently sold. To continue on the previous example, if that home was listed for $475,000 and you got it under contract for $495,000, well, then you paid $20,000 above the list price, but $5,000 below market value. So value is going to be determined by the comparable sales, and this is where your agent plays a major role in telling you prior to submitting an offer how the list price is looking in terms of market value and what it's likely to appraise for. Now, the other common way that people want to feel like they're getting a great deal is going to be seller concessions. For instance, I just showed you that inspection report, and someone with these poor expectations could say, well, they need to take care of everything. They need to install the railing that never existed. They need to fix the deck that doesn't really need to be fixed. And in that scenario, the deal is almost definitely going to fall apart, and no reasonable seller would agree to those repairs in this type of market. And as a buyer, not only are you going to go back to square one, but you are inevitably going to face the same issue on your next deal. So that leaves the question, well, what does a great deal look like? Well, number one, a great deal is buying a home that aligns with the biggest priorities for you and your family. If it's in the location that's going to be the best fit, if it's in the house that is going to have your top priorities in terms of size, finishes, and features, is it comfortably within your budget? And is the contract price comparable to what similar homes have sold for or gone under contract for in the immediate area? The second piece of what a great deal would look like is the seller willing to address the major items that come up on an inspection report that represent either a safety issue or a potential large expense. If the answer to all the questions that I just mentioned is a strong yes, you absolutely have a great deal in your hands, irregardless of if you got $50,000 off the arbitrary list price. Now, again, this is market specific, so if we somehow gained a huge surplus of inventory and there were not as many buyers in the market in your local area, we would switch to a strong buyer's market in which the buyers have the majority of the leverage. You'd have more homes to choose from. When you get a home under contract, the seller's going to be way more likely to take care of more issues, even if they're smaller issues. But until that type of market comes around again, if it ever does, you have to have reasonable expectations for what a great deal looks like. Number 3 on the list is home maintenance. This applies usually to people who have never owned a home before, and unfortunately, they can often just have unrealistic expectations about what owning a home means practically. The reality is, even if you purchase brand new construction, you are likely to have some project or thing that needs working on in the house at any given time. For you homeowners out there, you know there is always a project or something needing money thrown at it or work thrown at it at any given time when you own a house. And of course, we go through a rigorous process and hire the best inspectors and negotiate as hard as we can. We do all the due diligence we can to make sure that we're not moving you into a money pit. The reality is, things can happen. Your HVAC might break in the first 6 months of you owning a home, and that would be extremely unfortunate. And there are situations where that could be someone's fault, but there are also situations where it's just bad luck. Now, I'm not trying to scare you that that is a common thing that happens. All I'm trying to say is if you go into this process understanding that home ownership means there's always going to be something that you're working on or saving money to fix at some point, you are way less likely to be shocked and stressed out when one of those issues arises. Now, if you just don't have any tolerance for these types of things or older homes or older systems, you may want to look at brand new construction. You certainly should expect in that scenario to have your maintenance deferred much longer than a resale home. However, even with new construction homes, there probably will at least be smaller items that you have to take care of over time. And after a few years before you know it, you may have to start saving up for some slightly larger issues. So my advice here is just understand what you're getting into when you pursue homeownership. Number 4 on the list is bad real estate agent, bad lender. You've probably heard me talk about these things before. I am going to explain it to you from the context of being a listing agent, the person representing the seller, which I also do occasionally in addition to helping people relocate here from out of state. Now, this one is particularly insidious because as the client of this agent or lender, you may not actually know what's going on that worked against you until it's too late. So what do I mean? Anytime that I list a home in Atlanta, Georgia, if it's a popular one that receives multiple offers, I inevitably get offers that have no chance right from the start from winning, even outside of the price, even if the price is in line with the other offers I receive. Now, why would that be? Really, it usually comes down to a lack of experience and preparation for you as their client. So for example, if you submit an offer on my hot new listing, but you're asking for 15 days due diligence, 21 days to get back the appraisal, and you're telling me your client has to sell their home before they can buy this one and it's not even listed yet, you are seriously unlikely to ever win that contract. So it's really important that your agent understands what a winning deal looks like and understands all the factors that affect how strong an offer is. For example, if you have to sell your home before you can purchase one, we have to submit a contingent offer. That represents an elevated risk to the seller. And so really what your agent would need to do is set expectations with you and guide you through the timeline to where you probably submit an offer after your home has been listed, even more ideally after it's been under contract. And then because you're offering contingent, the other terms of your offer cannot be as strong as if you were offering all cash with no contingencies. So the context of each deal is incredibly important. And unfortunately, many agents just fail to consider all the different factors, and they waste their time and their clients' time by submitting offers that never had a chance of winning. Now, the other common way we see this is people working with lenders that are non-responsive or move incredibly slow. And this is more commonly seen when people choose to work with lenders that are out of state in the state that they're purchasing in, and big banks like Wells Fargo or Bank of America. For context, the local lender that I typically recommend to my clients can close a conventional loan in as little as 17 days. They can eliminate the financing contingency completely, and they can get an appraisal back in 5 days. Now, even without knowing exactly what all of those things mean, if you compare that to an offer at the same purchase price, a conventional loan, but they're asking for 30 days to close and 14 days to get approved for the loan and 21 days to get the appraisal back, that offer doesn't have a chance. So the decision of what lender you work with goes well beyond what rate you're getting or what the fees are. And in extremely competitive markets like we had in 2021, you need a lender that is going to answer your phone at any time, even on Sundays, that's going to call the listing agent and advocate on your behalf, and that knows the contracts. I get so many people telling me they want to use their lender or broker from the state that they're coming from, and then I have to spend my time actually explaining our Georgia state-specific contracts to these lenders. Now, I think it's pretty obvious to see how there's no way a lender could be as effective as one who is local and who is familiar with our Georgia state contracts. So by all means, hire your cousin or aunt who has their real estate license and does it on the side, but just know this could end up really working against you. Number 5 on the list is priorities and being on the same page. And this is more relevant for couples or families. And you would think that everyone is on the same page exactly about what they're looking for. However, that is not always the case. Now, people always ask me how long the home buying process in the Atlanta area takes, and the reality is if we have all our ducks in a row, if we set proper expectations, and if we do the pre-work to narrow down the areas and type of home that we're looking for, it should not take long. It should not really take longer than 2 months to find a great, viable home that's going to work fantastic for your family. If it's taking longer than that, if you're seeing 20, 30, 40 homes in places all over the metro Atlanta area, that is a red flag that we don't have alignment. So one of the biggest services that I offer clients, and one of the biggest things that you need to do to make sure that this process is extremely stress-free for you, is really just write out a list of your ultimate priorities in order with your spouse, or if you don't have a spouse, then great. You're the only opinion that matters, which is awesome. But I'll give you some just quick examples. Do you want to live in the city or in the suburbs? What kind of lifestyle do you want? You'd think that'd be pretty obvious, but I have had clients that are like, well, let's go look in this house in the suburbs. And then we also want to go see this house that's in the heart of the city, a mile away from downtown. Now, we can do that. There's no problem. And some people really are that flexible, but to me, that's a sign that you don't really know what you want. So we really want to back up a step, hone in on what we're looking for, and that will make our search much more effective. It's because the difference in lifestyle and living in the suburbs and living in the heart of Atlanta is going to be huge. So you really need to think through what kind of lifestyle that you're looking for and what the biggest priority is when purchasing a home. Another kind of funny example I have for you around this is I had clients who were, looking at homes in a certain area. We had the area locked down. We got this gorgeous home under contract for a great deal that I thought checked all of their boxes, every single one. We get the inspection report back and we have conversations during due diligence, and they decide, we don't want a pool. We're nervous. We're worried about our small children falling in the pool and general maintenance, and it seems like a safety hazard. Which, listen, totally legitimate concerns, but this whole time we're only looking at homes with pools for a month or two. And now you've gone through this process, you've gotten it under contract, you've paid for an additional pool inspection, and you've decided a pool is too dangerous for your family because you have small children. Again, totally valid decision. I'm not judging that, but it would have benefited them. This is not about benefiting me. It would have saved them time and money to realize that ahead of time, right? Understand what the implications are of owning a home with a pool. It does require another level of maintenance. It does require another level of safety precautions if you have small children, especially if it's uncovered or not fenced in. So these are the types of mistakes that can end up costing you money and time. And so it's really important you have these specific in-depth conversations with your family about what the most important things are, what type of lifestyle you're looking for, what type of home you're looking for, and which type of features are must-have and which would be nice-to-haves. All right, there you have it. 5 ways buying a home in the Atlanta area can go really wrong. As usual, I talked way longer than I planned to, so I hope some of you stuck with me. I hope I kept it interesting and lean and to the point, but this is real stuff. I know none of it may sound life-changing or groundbreaking, but this is real practical ways you can prepare with your family before getting into this process that are guaranteed to reduce the likelihood of regret and stress and frustration. A lot of it, most of it is expectations and working with professionals with experience so that they can help set those expectations and help you understand what a great deal looks like. So thank you so much for watching. As always, if you are looking to purchase a home or sell your home in the Atlanta area, we would love to help. That's why I make these videos. You can book a Zoom call with me directly for free using the link in the description below. My number's there, my email's there. I love when my viewers reach out to me. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.